So hi, I am Brian at Bosque Village, and today I'm joined by a very interesting guy. He posted some stuff that kind of got me excited about the personal ways he's evaluating his life and his impact on the planet. I admire people like that. I wish there was a lot more of them. So I wanted to kind of learn more about what he's up to, and we could compare the choices we're making and the lifestyle that we lead. So Alex, how's it going today? Who are you?
Yeah, doing really well. Thank you. I'm right here in Santa Cruz, California. It's in the Bay Area, on the west coast of California. Beautiful area. And yeah, happy to be
Excellent.
on the show. Thank you, Brian.
And you are spending most of your time or full time working on your projects?
Yeah, so I haven't had a real job for a couple decades. About 20 years since I just started doing freelance photojournalism and just immersed myself in environmental projects, humanitarian projects, activism, volunteering, and just anything to make the world a better place. I didn't want to work for any company or corporation. I wanted to do things the way I wanted to do them. I wanted to participate in things that was going to help my community, help people, animals, or the environment. So that's usually how I decide what project that I'm going to do. And there was a long time that I wanted to just go out and live on a property, on land, have a tiny home, live off grid. I did a lot of education and training and research to be off grid. That's what I wanted more than anything. I worked towards that for a long time. And I realized even if I lower my individual carbon footprint, I have to help encourage my family and my friends and other people in the society to lower their own carbon footprint. So I decided to not just focus on myself, but try to do what I can by lowering my carbon footprint while living in society and trying to be an activist and help with our global transition towards sustainability and our transition towards a caring society. So I'm still here in society. I respect, value, and envy, and yeah, a little jealous that you get to live this beautiful life where you're at and lower your carbon footprint. That's my dream, but unfortunately, I'm still here trying to do activism and
Yeah.
reach more people.
Well, I think it's fantastic because although, my path has been really interesting, I spent almost 17 years now out in the woods off the grid and
Wow.
experimenting with food forest farming and how we might be able to live in a future civilization that may not have as much resources available, and hopefully we can waste less. But so many people are in the city, and so the solutions that they need are there right now. So I really appreciate that kind of work. And what I've been really encouraged by is that it seems like interest is increasing a lot right now in the last couple of
Yes,
years.
definitely.
Yeah, and the pandemic has an effect on that also, where more people are thinking about storing food, being prepared for disasters, all that kind of thing.
And sustainability and growing their own food and
Right,
harvesting their own
right.
water and stuff. So they're less dependent on the food transportation system and other, e-commerce and people. And yeah, just more self-sufficient,
Yeah,
definitely.
it's almost good if things break down in slow ways rather than just completely collapse. Because if they break down bit by bit, then we have opportunities to innovate and to realize that we're wasting a lot of resources to make things more efficient. So it's kind of maybe there'll be a lot of good things that happen out of the current struggles.
Yeah, I hope and I do see more people realizing that when you waste resources, it's not just wasting Earth's finite resources, it's actually usually wasting money. If you waste electricity, you're wasting money. If you waste water, if you waste food. And we do need to transition to a circular economy and a sustainable society. I mean, we have to. We have too much to lose. And with the worldwide internet, and we now have more global connection through cell phones and internet. We can connect with people around the world like this and start working towards unified solutions because we have all that information. Like what the solutions are, I know what the solutions are, but we do need to reach more people. And the pandemic, you're right, it was a huge wake up call for how fragile, sensitive our global food transportation system is, and even how people get basic goods, water, toilet paper, and some other resources. And it did encourage a lot of people to be sustainable. When it comes to that aspect, there is a fine line in between being sustainable, which is obviously really important, being prepared for disasters and stockpiling enough food to get you through that year, through that season, whether it's a dry season, a drought, or a winter, but then not stockpiling enough that you're hoarding too many resources that we don't have balanced throughout our society. And it has that possibility that it's all going to go bad and then end up in a landfill, and then that carbon footprint was not consumed. Yeah, it's just so there's a good balance in between having enough resources and supplies that I always try to remind people about when it comes to preparing and sustainability.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And you know, I store food, I store dried goods at least for 6 months,
Right.
and I very rarely have ever had it go bad. That is definitely a
Cool.
potential problem.
But you have chickens and rabbits if it does. So
Right.
not everyone does. They have like 5-10 years worth of food, and it just goes back into the landfills, and it's just that's not sustainable if everyone hoards more than like okay. So I think yeah, sustainable is like 1 year, 6 months, especially if you're living off grid. It might even be a year because you might go through a mega drought, or you might go through a severe rainstorm, or other climate related disasters that you need to recover from. But yeah, some of these wealthy people that are stockpiling large volumes of food, all of those resources are just being wasted. So but yeah, sustainability is important. I learned a lot about seed saving, and I love seed saving, and that's also important when we take away the power from Monsanto and all of these big corporations that are just polluting all the seed stockpiles with GMOs and all of that. So seed saving is another just really important thing that we should all learn to do, and just know the difference between GMO, non-GMO, organic, non-organic, and heirloom seeds is really important. And that's I'm sure you know all about
Yeah.
seed saving and
Yeah.
storage. And
Yeah. I have a special cabinet set aside just for that. And
I
I'm
saw
actually
that in your
making,
video. Yeah.
yeah, I'm making a calendar of like when we collect each kind of seed, when we would do starts, if we were going to do starts, when we would direct
Right.
sow, and then when we expect to harvest, so that we can extend the growing season. So
Okay.
it,
Yeah.
it seems
Just
like
staying organized is important.
there's so many topics we could talk about.
Mhm.
Have you, I'm interested in the reactions you get. Obviously, some people like us, I mean, we're kind of preaching to the choir here. We have different paths, but we probably share a lot of the same values. Have you gotten negative responses to your work?
Yeah, it's not happening as often. So I worked for a couple major TV stations in the year 1999, 2000, and then that's when I started doing a lot of freelance photojournalism. I've covered about 40 forest fires. I've now been through 7 hurricanes. I've covered the aftermath of 5. I've been tornado chasing. A couple years ago, I went to Iraq by myself on a humanitarian mission. I was in Ghana during the Ebola outbreak, and I've a whole bunch of like landslides and snowstorms and blizzards, car accidents. So as I continue to do all of these freelance photojournalism projects, I started taking a lot of the training courses to do, first aid and disaster relief. So I took all the Red Cross courses, the CERT course, which stands for Community Emergency Response Teams. I took the EMT course. I went to Cabrillo College and I took renewable energy and resources, solar technology, green building construction and design, a lot of horticulture classes, hydroponics. So I started learning everything that I could to do environmental work, humanitarian work, and disaster relief work in different places around the world. And thankfully, I have seen that shift that I was talking about over the last 2 decades, from people telling me that it used to happen, like, you're a tree hugger, you're a hippie, and I'm like, I don't have long hair, I'm like, I'm not wearing hemp, and I don't even smoke weed. So all of this like misinformation that was being spread. So over the years, it's been really bad. But I do see a lot of those people that are or that are criticizing me and my work have mostly diminished, because going on all these very large missions, working with international aid organizations, governmental and non-governmental aid organizations, having a lot of college classes completed under my belt, having now done so much journalism with different issues around the world, I think that I've built up my credibility that not as many people are questioning me and giving me a hard time for what I'm doing. And to reach people, you were talking about preaching to the choir, and I have thought about that over the years. And so some of the ways to combat that is to reach the largest audience possible in the most efficient way. So you try to make the best use of your time, your money, and your energy. So right now, you, Brian, you're doing this video with your time and energy to reach more people, to hope this video changes people's mindset, and then they start maybe doing some of the things that we recommend in this video to become more sustainable. So over all those years, I've done all of these different things to try to reach as many people. So I've now, done 27 public speeches in front of middle school, high school, college, and university classes. I have stuff on YouTube, stuff on Facebook. I have my environmental Facebook group with 8,500 members. I spent 8 years working on a book that was printed. I've spent thousands of dollars printing stickers on, recycled paper, without the plastic stuff that say climate change or whatever. I paid Facebook $2,800 to boost environmental content to millions of people around the world, because sometimes you just pay $100 and you reach 100,000 people in a developing country. I actually can't see it, but I have climate emergency tattooed right here on my arm, across my arm. It says climate emergency. I've had t-shirts and hats. There's conversations, word of mouth. I have my megaphone right here. So last night I went out front of all of these restaurants where there's a lot of people, and I would say, excuse me, we're in a climate emergency. Please remember to talk about climate change, in front of, the dozens of people sitting outside of restaurants. So I've now been on like community TV, the radio so many times, the newspaper. So all of these things that I'm doing, I'm just trying to reach the most amount of people, because these messages are so important. And now, since I'm in the city, that's my goal. You probably sometimes feel that you have this information you want to get out to more people, right? With like your skill sets and what you know, and just about being sustainable, right, Brian?
Yeah, it's
Because you want
interesting.
everyone to live the way that you're living and
I don't have a lot of confidence that most people are actually going to change their consumption. They may alter it, and they may even go buy like more green products or something, when maybe they shouldn't buy anything at
right.
all. But so I'm not super confident that people in the industrial world, the wealthy of the world, and I don't mean the people who are just the 1% in the US, but the 1% worldwide, which includes a bunch of our friends probably. I'm very confident that they're actually
Yeah.
going to change. Maybe they'll get chickens or something, but all of them still shit in clean water. I don't think I've convinced a single person to build a composting toilet. And that's a little depressing.
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah, I
know
see what
that'll
you're saying.
change.
So we got to do everything that we can, and like, so if you one way to explain it is, if I tell someone, okay, like, you might not understand what organic food is, but just try to buy something organic once in a while, because it'll make a difference. So if we get that one person to buy organic food once in a while, and we get a whole bunch of them to do that, or one person starts buying those more energy efficient light bulbs, or when they replace their dryer, they change the Energy Star, and like all of these little things that we can do, I think collectively those add up. So it might not be that composting toilet, but it might be someone starts storing seeds, because there's a lot of things that we got to change. And I mean, I've been studying environmental science for a couple decades now. There are just so many categories and subcategories and more subcategories in so many different subjects of things that we can do. How you spend your time, how you spend your money, the food that you eat, the conversations you have, all the things that you do consumes resources and energy, and it dictates like how the life that you're going to live. And it is a challenge. As far as our society, we're just out of balance. We're too many people are watching too much TV shows, pornography, movies, video games, sports, religion. I don't know, like little collectibles and all of these little things that people just waste their time with. We're just out of balance. Instead of people like growing organic food, eating healthy, like loving one another, like helping animals, like picking up trash, or we have all the solutions, but we're really like out of balance, and people see that in America. And I know that we're living outside of our means. As far as capitalism, people buying and owning things that they don't need, things that don't serve a purpose, things that they use and it ends up back in the landfill. So I've tried to become a minimalist. I own enough stuff that would probably fit in my vehicle 2 or 3 times. I do want to live in a tiny home on some land. I don't ever want a big house, and I don't even want to. I didn't drive a car for 7 years. I recently got my Prius at the beginning of this pandemic, just to make things easier. So I'm saddened by the people that own multiple houses, that own multiple cars, that own just all of this stuff, because it's impacting the environment, it's impacting other people's quality of life. And I think that so as far as that goes, we are continuing to see the divide between the rich and the poor grow. We're continuing to see more artificial intelligence, AI, automation, robotics, software, machines, mechanics, like software efficiency, and it's causing the rich to get richer and the poor to get poorer. So we're seeing widespread homeless people, and it's just throwing us even more out of balance, because then those people can't live sustainably. So I think we should tax the rich more, and we should have universal income, universal basic income, UBI, and I think that would help balance everything. I also think that there's way too many laws and regulations with tiny homes, that if we loosen those laws so people can live in tiny homes, that would also help that balance. Maybe some people in bigger houses would choose to live in a tiny home, and the homeless wouldn't be homeless, they'd be living in tiny homes. And I think that that balance is important, and consumerism, and there's so many issues. Companies are making stuff that you use once and it breaks, it ends up in a landfill, like the cell phone cables are an umbrella and like wheelbarrows. I mean, we just need to buy like things that, I mean, when you live out there, you buy things that are good, high quality, durable, they last. Or glass, stainless steel, durable metal, or compostable. You probably rarely buy plastic, or you try not to, or things that are just going to break because it's just not sustainable. And
Yeah, yeah, I don't do perfectly. I like to kind of try and design a whole culture, a set of values that can exist in a single place, because it's very difficult to do that, of course, in the city. You're just bombarded with so many things. You get sucked into systems, and you really don't have much choice. So here,
right.
there isn't a store nearby that I can even buy junk at. So it's actually hard to live a consumer lifestyle. And hopefully,
Okay.
it's interesting because people sometimes ask me, like, don't you feel like you're missing out on things? And yes, I am, but most of the things I'm missing out on, I don't want. Like, I don't have very many bills. I am not able to just order stuff on Amazon. Even the mail. I mean, I have friends sent me a package with a few objects in it, and she sent it over a month ago, and I haven't gotten it. And so
Yeah.
it's actually good to be physically broken away from the ability to consume so easily.
Right. We the internet, eBay, Amazon, the ability just to order some food through Uber Eats or DoorDash and all those things. We've just become really dependent on the system and convenience, and yeah, just capitalism, just having every access to everything. But all of these things that we buy, all of these things that we purchase, have an environmental impact. Again, like purchasing something Uber Eats just to have them drive it, 2 blocks away instead of walking, or buying some Amazon, and getting it next day shipping, all of the environmental impact of that. And like, yeah, it's just the consumerism thing. I wish that I wasn't involved in this consumerism thing. But again, some of the things that I have does help me, like the megaphone, for instance. It's made out of plastic, but it does help me reach more people. So I try my best to when I buy things, to do a lot of research, I think is important. Sometimes I'll spend, like the last flashlight I bought, I literally spent like an hour, maybe an hour and a half, just researching for the best flashlight, because I don't want things to break. And if I spend the money, I want to make sure that it's a good purchase. So I'm always reading the reviews and the ratings and all of that. Again, I value that you have this this opportunity to live off the land, and use the resources that you have and be a minimalist. When I've gone on not missions, well, missions too, like okay, so let's say when I went to Big Sur or Yosemite, or when I summited Mount Whitney, or when I went to the Himalayan foothills of Nepal. All of those 4 remote regions are areas where you can't leave trash. Everything that you bring there, you have to bring out. And that's what's so frustrating with the excessive plastic packaging techniques. All of these companies, or a lot of the companies and corporations, are just selling you all of this plastic and a little bit of food. So like the little seaweed snacks that you see in like all these stores, I actually weighed it. You get 54% plastic and 46% food. You get more plastic than food. So can you imagine, like, it's horrible. So like bread, for instance, the wrapper on bread is only 1% just for that plastic bag. People criticize plastic bags all the time. They're horrible, but you're getting only 1% plastic versus some of these other products. So when I've gone to those 4 places that I'm talking about, it's so frustrating just trying to like go camping and you get food, even this organic food that you buy, and it just comes in all this plastic. So then you're like out in nature and you have all this stuff, and I'm sure you've experienced it, right? When you get stuff in the mail and you live on this property. So that's another thing that's frustrating with our society, and it's a wake up call when you realize that.
Yeah. Well,
Have you had experience with that?
I only get a package like every 2 years or so, so it's pretty uncommon. I do have a rule here or I have had a rule here for various participants that come, that they have to bring out all their trash. So they may stay here for 2 months, but all of their trash they're collecting. And the thing is, because of the lifestyle, they're proud. They're surprised and proud that they produce so little trash.
Yeah.
It's because of how the food system here works, because of
because you're growing a lot of your food, right?
Well, no, we're not growing it all. It's very slow process to develop this kind of food forest. I mean, it can take decades. And so I'm not, there's a lot of things that people see that can be done. I mean, we've got thousands, we could sit here and list them, many in different areas. And some of those are kind of fake solutions. It really depends. Like obviously we're not going to completely stop using plastic. I'm talking to you on a computer that's made of plastic or has a lot. I use a camera that has plastic. So I actually have a rule, no plastic, but I expect to break it. I want the rule to elevate my thinking so that I see what plastic I'm using. But I'm in a room, there's other plastic here. I mean, it's imperfect. And so all I can do is try bits and pieces and then measure how I do overall. And
improvement, constantly improving.
Right. Just let's improve it. And it's on the wealthy of the world, even the ones who don't think they're wealthy. A lot of people in the US think that somebody else is the problem, right? But it's them. And so it's really up to them more than it is the people who are fairly destitute in the world. Like I live in rural Mexico, right? And people aren't destitute, but they don't just go out and buy a bunch of crap. Life is really simple here. And what's interesting is that they're in a much more secure and powerful position than some of my friends who have a big fancy house and tons of kitchen gadgets and they got a big mortgage. If there's an economic downturn, if the fake money we use is manipulated in a way, or there's hyperinflation or whatever is going to happen, they could lose their home to the bank because they don't own their home. The bank owns their home. Now here, theoretically poor people, right, living in really simple conditions, they won't lose their home. They're not as great a risk. So part of my message isn't actually to help poor people because they're not the problem. And there's lots of people who are trying to bring people up to some minimum level of standard of living, which is awesome. I think it's great. Lots of people working on that. I'm actually very interested in talking to people in the US and Europe about how they can change their life and actually have a better one, even though they're consuming less. Because you've met people, and some people are proud of like, oh yeah, I've got this new car. I paid, $200 for this shirt. And there's a different kind of people who are like, I've had my car for 20 years and I got this shirt at a thrift store for $2. That's a different reason to be proud.
Yeah, I agree. So as far as my shirt, so this is Patagonia. Have you heard of Patagonia? Relatively environmental company. They do a lot of good things. This was one of my sponsors, so I got a discount on that. This is Piranha. So Piranha, have you heard? It's also like a really good environmental company.
I did
So
hear that one.
this is like recycled or whatever, and this is from a thrift store as well.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm trying my best to vote with my money. So as far as I made a list on Facebook of all of these different things that you can do. And I just couldn't believe how much stuff we can all do and the little things that we can change.
Yeah.
I was, thinking like, okay, well, people ask, do you drive, do you this, that? So I was like, okay, well, yeah, I just bought a vehicle, but I made this list of all these different things, and it was extremely long because there's just so many things that we can incorporate into our life, where we go, and things that we do that helps either lower our carbon footprint, helps lower our environmental impact, or helps with carbon sequestration. So composting is a good thing that we could do for carbon sequestration. Not using any chemicals, like I never use any chemicals. That's another thing that just helps, because all the chemicals are just killing all this organic matter in life, and that's also damaging. So just so many things. I wish that I can grow a large percentage of my own food. I have been able to in the past. Right now I have 7 chickens where I live, and I do give them all the organic scraps, but I wish that I could expand on that and have a larger garden, hopefully next year. So I wanted to tell you, so I saw your video, great video, really cool. I apologize that I didn't watch the whole thing. I made it approximately halfway through. I love what you're doing. The main building, the main room was really incredible. That was awesome. So again, I'm jealous. It's looks like an amazing place. How many acres was it on your the area?
83 acres here. And,
Wow, just
and it's forested
amazing.
It's forested all around it. My
Right,
challenge
that
right
makes it
now,
seem larger.
right. So
Yeah.
my nearest neighbor is about 2 kilometers away.
Okay,
So
that's
it's pretty
where
out here.
I live. It's similar. It's on 8 acres, but then it's forested all around, so it makes it feel like I'm on 1,000 forested acres.
Right.
So it gives you that space.
Part of the challenge I have here, the video you saw, by the way, was the tour video. I'll just mention this for
Okay.
you watching. It was a tour of the physical infrastructure that I use here to live off the grid. So it was rain capture, composting toilets, solar panels, that kind of stuff. One of the big challenges where I live is that the forests are getting cut down for monoculture. And so my goal is to make the use of this forest have a higher value than monoculture would.
Right.
And that's fairly difficult in a fairly non-wealthy area, because the locals, of course, they're very tempted to sell their land to somebody who will pay more, even though long term they're actually destroying their land for their own offspring and the offspring of their offspring.
Yeah.
So
so you're trying to show them, give them example that your land value can go up if you do these steps. So don't sell it for monoculture.
Right.
And I think the way we all vote with our money, more people that start realizing, more stuff about climate change and the climate emergency and sustainability, properties like that you're creating will have a higher value than something that just produces, food or,
that is my hope.
food. Yeah.
That is my hope. And one of the weird things is I've hosted people mostly. I've mostly hosted travelers. And so I don't have any long-term partners in this. I would like to. And that's, it's difficult to set that up. There's many models of how that could work. But for now, the goal has been to have people here and have people near nature without destroying it. Because wherever humans go, they destroy nature all around them. We are
even if you walk, even trails destroy.
Right.
So
right. Like
when I'm on a trail, I stay on the trail so I don't destroy the nature outside of the trail. No matter where we go, we destroy nature for the most part.
Right. And I think that we can maybe, it would be difficult to make change by making people feel guilty, or by, you can yell at people, you're yelling at them, that's great. But
I do both combinations. I try a series of things.
Yeah, we try carrot and stick. But one of my goals is to make such an attractive lifestyle that seems very fun, that seems so healthy, that the people's motivation is purely selfish, that it seems like the funnest, best way to go because all the cool people are doing it. You know? And so I have a festival background with like Burning Man and Oregon Country Fair and these kind of things. And I've always wondered at these festivals, people say like welcome home, and there's this wonderful feeling to it. How can we instill those same feelings into our normal culture? how can we be a subgroup, a subculture that is living in a way that even though we're not using a lot of resources, we're having way more fun than other people. Sex is always a draw for people. So maybe if we get sexy people living minimalist lifestyles, people will be like, oh, well, that's the fun way to live, clearly, or more art, or more personal fulfillment, more acceptance of individuality. This is a really interesting one because so many people, and you've traveled the world, you see they're essentially trapped in their culture. They cannot break out of it. And lots of individuals are in great pain in those cultures. Well, we live in a world now with the internet where we can pick and choose who we want to be culturally. Unless someone's going to, with their religion or government, punish us, we can decide how we want to live, what social agreements we want to make with each other that give us more freedom and still have a base of agreements that we have certain values. So this is almost like thinking, can we make a global cultural change, and it won't be global at once, that is just inherently more attractive. People want this change. And because currently, of course, as organisms, we evolve, and the primary objective of an organism is to get more resources so you can live it all, and then you can hopefully reproduce, and then your offspring will reproduce. We've been genetically evolved to have an attitude of, I need more stuff. We
and
want
security and insurance. Yeah.
Sure, and we want to eat sugar and fat and these things as much as we can because we evolved in a state where we were deprived. And now we're not deprived, we're dying of diabetes because we're fat. We have too much success, and all that success is based on temporary fossil fuels that are going to become more expensive. This massive resurgence. And that green energy is not going to magically fix that, by the way. There's all these false notions out there, and everybody's trying to lie to people to keep them consuming, and eat. They just want to change the parameters a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. That's a little rambly, but I get very rambly. I've been living alone in the woods a long time, so my social skills are questionable.
Yeah, you just brought up a lot of thoughts and ideas. So as far as you were saying, to set an example, with the sexy aspect of communal living or minimalism and all of that, I do hope there is a shift when it comes to some of the celebrities, the famous people. I mean, so much of our society, even here maybe mainly here in America or other people around the world, I'm not sure, would idolize the MTV cribs and all of these wealthy people with all of these extra houses and this stuff. It's not sustainable, it's not sexy, and it's not cool, and it's not not even morally correct to own that much stuff, the big closets and all of these things when other people around the world are starving and suffering, and fossil fuels were burned to create that. Animals were killed to create that. And a lot of animals suffered, and it's horrible. So I hope that, again, through the power of the internet, social media, we can raise awareness of these things, and we can transition away from that lavish lifestyle to, the way that you're living. So there's different ways of sustainability. There's, owning a property and having a food forest and doing it that way. But then there's the aspect that cities are more efficient when it comes to transporting electricity, mail, water, resources, goods, stores, transportation systems, not needing to have a car, a lot of even heating in large apartment complexes and buildings and all that. But that life is not for everyone. I couldn't handle that life. A lot of those lifestyles are 9 to 5 work, like New York and everything. So there is the sustainability aspects where it's more efficient, but I do hope they start incorporating more nature into these places, or more trees, or more things to offset the carbon instead of just monocropping, in the closest fields. And there's a word for that, bio something, where you incorporate people with nature. So I hope we start seeing more of that. They're doing some of that in Singapore and Dubai, where they're creating, there's some really cool YouTube videos I'd recommend you, Brian, or anyone watching. Dubai is doing some really cool stuff with this new sustainable city that has rainwater catchment, solar panels, and they filter their own water and grow their own food, and the way the whole place is and it's built like from scratch. It's not like they're retrofitting an old city. They're
Right.
designing new cities, completely new, like how cities should be built. And those are hopefully learning models that we can be duplicating for where we need to because we're going to have to be relocating people at low elevation coastal areas around the world because of rising ocean sea levels. So we're going to have to be building some of the new cities as well as retrofitting our existing cities to be more resilient for climate related superstorms of the future and more food insecurities and uncertainty. So I think hydroponics is important, and aquaponics, and indoor stuff. One of the things that I'm curious with where you're at is just water. Like that's a huge
Sure.
concern, and I heard about that in your video. So yeah, you could do rainwater catchment, as I saw. I don't know, like drilling a well is expensive, and there might not even be access to that. There's a lot of drought tolerant plants, like cactuses, like Nepal cactus, because you can, make juice from the fruit, and you could eat the other part. So what and there's different ways to store water. You have the concrete one, but maybe there's digging, like to have a pond. But there's also the inflatable bags that might be cheaper than a water tank. It's like a big water bed that blows up. But what are some of your goals with long-term water catchment or storage, other
So,
than just more water tanks?
right.
Because
I
that's
have I have a fairly short rainy season here. It's about 3 or
yeah,
4
exactly.
months at most. And so the big expense on rain capture is the storage. It's easy to
Right.
capture it. And I have a
Okay.
variety of
So when
kinds
it
of
rains,
storage.
there's enough. There's enough when it rains. You just can't store it.
I currently, I just talked with a local friend of mine who I've worked with for over 10 years in the place here. And we were just, talking about water, and we were saying, well, how much of the water do you figure we actually capture here that we could? And we
Right.
think it's under 10%, because
Yeah.
most of the buildings don't have a water storage system.
Right.
And then even on my main building, where I have a 95,000 liter stone one that you saw, a stone
Yeah.
and
Right.
concrete, and then behind the building, there's a 7,000 liter big plastic one. Those fill up pretty early in the rainy season. That means all of the rest of the rains I'm losing. I could
Yeah.
save those and do more stuff. Now that's okay. I have way
Yeah.
more than I need as an individual. The composting toilet
But
saves a
other
lot of
people
water.
coming in, like you said, you want to have more visitors and like
Right.
expand to.
And the ideal is that you would actually look at your climate, look at your rainfall, your normal rainfall, which could change in the future, and then calculate, because there's a formula for how much rain hits what, square
Right.
footage of roof.
Surface area. Yeah, and you
Right.
multiply that
And
per
and then
inch.
and then in the rain pattern you're in, that you
Watershed.
can actually calculate how much is your maximum you could collect,
Mhm.
and then how many square feet of roof do you need to meet your personal water needs.
Right.
So there's
But
all
that's just for the roof area, because you also have other areas that you can capture water other than just your roof. Your roof's probably the largest areas to capture water.
sure.
But then is there any like little creeks or runoff areas that you can do any type of pond and use some sort of biofilm to line it so you could do it larger and you could have would
Right.
that work?
I
Is that a
have
possibility?
I have picked out 5 places I would like to make lakes. There's a guy named Seb Holzer. I don't know if you know who that is. Seb Holzer. He's in
No.
Austria, big permaculture guy, and he makes great lakes. Awesome lakes. He just digs a hole with a big bulldozer, and then he puts pigs in there for a while, and the pigs make a lot of mud, and they squish the
That's
dirt,
right.
and then they put, I
Okay.
think, bentonite or some kind of clay. And
Yeah, I
so,
knew there were some things to put in it. Cool.
right now, whether the lakes in this climate would dry out or not, I don't know, and it doesn't really matter. The goal with landscaping, you've heard of swales and stuff. You're trying to get the water to go into the soil, and you're actually storing it within the soil, which sounds weird because you
So
can't
it would
see it.
expand out too, even if it did through the property. So the lake placement would be important. Also,
Sure.
if you had trees over it, would create partial shade. And at the same time, even if it extended your water storage for 1 month or 4 months longer than you currently have it, it seems like it'd be worth it. And do you ever have water shipped into you? Because that also takes fossil fuels. But if you do the tractor once with that lake,
Right.
or a big pond, I mean, I would think that'd be a really cool project. That'd be good for the long term.
Right. You mentioned things like wells and there's other sources of water. I am actually against those because you're stealing water from somewhere, especially
Okay.
in a place like California where they're sucking water out of the aquifers
And it's now lowering the whole,
Right.
Central Valley,
Yeah,
and
it's
yeah,
just
it's horrible.
essentially like oil, and you can't keep doing that for 100 years more. Eventually, when you keep making exceptions, we're like, oh, we'll just take this amount of water out this year. And it's like, no, eventually you're going to lose. You have to develop a system that is going to be stable for you water wise. And rain capture, in terms of human use, rain capture is the way to go because you own your house and you can set up a system, you own your bit of land. What's interesting is that the state is often against this kind of thing. They're worried about health
Right.
things. And I even mentioned, like when I mentioned composting toilets, the truth is they're actually illegal, I think, in almost everywhere in the United States. It's illegal to
No,
not shit. This is really
yeah,
bizarre. It's illegal to not shit
yeah.
in clean water.
Yeah, that's horrible. I don't know about our county because I know a couple people that have them or have had them, and yeah, it's the ones that have the little fan and stuff. Maybe outdoor latrines and stuff. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's another thing with just red tape and legalities and things that have to change, and politics and all of that. It's just not changing fast enough for sustainability reasons. I mean, there's places in Florida that I guess you couldn't go off grid and have solar. They wanted you tied to the electrical grid. And there's places I think in Colorado or maybe it's Oregon, somewhere they also made it illegal to catch rainwater. So really frustrating. The downside with so in different places I've been, okay, Santa Cruz, we have the whole reservoir and the dam, and we get a percentage of the water from that, and the rest of it is actually through from underground. So those aquifers recharge, but if you extract the water beyond its recharge rate, that's when it's bad. So they do recharge naturally, but sometimes those are really slow in recharging naturally, especially like in your region if it's not raining as much. The only thing that I'm concerned with rainwater catchment and not diversifying, having a little bit of both, is you're then only dependent on the hydrological cycle functioning the way that it should. But as climate change continues to cause disruptions around the world, I would be concerned. But if you had that lake, that might offset some of the inconsistencies in the hydrological cycle to give you more of a cushion. And I think, yeah, the pig idea is a cool idea to incorporate them with the film and the pressure. And yeah, I hope that you get to that point because that would allow you to expand. And then, yeah, the solar thing that you mentioned too. So that's something that I take for granted. I mean, I have solar panels. I mean, I even have solar panels right here in my car. I am concerned. Let me grab this thing for you. It's really cool. I don't know if you've seen these, but hopefully someone can send you one of these in the future. So this is what I use, but even this panel that was $150, this is 60 watts. 60 watts. So this is like a large percentage of your panels, and it's mobile. So the shipping on this would probably be a lot cheaper. And there's US plugs on the side. And this is what I use for my disaster relief. And I actually charge my power pack with that. So I try to use that solar panel and my electricity box as often as possible, so I'm not dependent on the grid and it's more sustainable. So this does have a DC to AC converter, a battery, and I plug that panel into this. So I could try to be more sustainable, but yeah, not capturing water yet.
This is part of the great time we live in because you look at projects back in the 60s and people trying to go back to the land and all this stuff. And there was, a lot of successes and failures and experimentation. The technology we have now can allow us to live far more comfortably and more connected than what was possible before. So here, I only have 340 watts of solar panels for the whole place. And so that power is actually hooked up to 4 buildings total. And that's not enough if I have other people here, of course. But I'm thrilled. I have LED lights at night. I can use my laptop. I don't think I could actually have 2 people use a laptop that long at night. But what's cool about like your system is that you're independent and the technology is allowing you to have personal control over your electrical use. And so this is another example of the kind of small disasters we're experiencing, like when power goes out because of wildfires in California, or when the power goes out because it got too snowy and icy and rainy in Texas.
That
You know,
actually happened to me. I was part of the evacuation for one of the fires, and we lose power all the time. So this helps me not only be sustainable, it helps me to be more resilient as well.
okay. And we're going to drive that. It's going to be individuals who say, I don't like what happened to me in Texas. I don't like what happened to me in California. I'm going to take control. And
Yeah.
so, and technology now allows that. And the government is not going to be encouraging that. They still want you to shit in clean water so that your shit goes through tubes that they are in charge of digging up and, you know, burying in all the time into their waste treatment plant, because they want to control a centralized system. But there is no reason at this point that we need to live that way. It doesn't matter. And even like rural land is going to become more valuable, because if you can have a composting toilet and you can do it on land that doesn't need to perk well, and you don't need a septic tank, it's really simple. And you don't need a plastic one that costs a lot. You don't need a fan in it. I mean, mine are so simple,
Okay.
it is ridiculous. You know,
Okay.
against complex composting toilets. And the other thing that's going to really have a huge effect, I believe, about to have an effect, is internet from satellite. What's
Right.
that
Yes,
Elon Musk thing?
definitely.
I think Starlink or something, or
Yeah, I was thinking about mentioning that earlier when I was talking about, you know, internet in more places, and
right.
especially Africa. It's horrible in Africa and for developing countries.
Sure. Even in the US, the price of rural land is about to go up, because if you
Oh, they'll have internet to those places.
if you have internet, and your company is now thinking, because of the pandemic, they're now thinking, huh, we don't actually want to provide these people with offices because it's very expensive for us. You know, and so the price of office real estate is now going down. That's a poor investment right now. And all of a sudden, all this rural land is going to become available for very
Right.
comfortable, better living, really. Now, out
Yeah.
here in Mexico, in rural Mexico, I have no restrictions at all. I can build a composting toilet, no one cares. I can build a building, no one cares. I don't even need a permit. I can live on rainwater, nobody cares. I can grow rabbits. I've even sold rabbits. I only sold a couple because it wasn't worth going into town to sell them. But all of these things, that it's kind of a coalescence of, I don't know if I should use the word technology. It's appropriate technology, I guess is the term used,
Right.
because it's fairly simple technology, some of which is very more advanced and very carefully chosen. One of the examples I use is the Amish. You know some stereotypes about them, of course. They live really simple lives, and I don't want to live like the Amish. I like colors, you know. I'm not going to wear all black, you know, and I'm not going to follow their traditions or speak their language. But what I like about the Amish is that there isn't actually a centrally dictated thing about what technology to use or not. Individual groups make their own decisions about how they want to deal with technology. So, for example, a group might decide we will get one telephone in our community, and they will share it. And so they get the benefits of the telephone, but everybody doesn't need their own telephone. And if they want to use a vehicle, they've decided, oh, well, you know what? If we do the calculations, if we really kind of think about the bigger equation culturally, owning a vehicle, having a driver's license, having insurance, having a risk of your kids, you know, your teenagers driving around and getting injured or whatever, it just isn't worth it. We would rather hire the truck, because the truck isn't
That
more,
one time or
right,
the few
it's not
times.
more.
Okay.
We'll hire the truck and the driver for the very few cases in which we really need it, as opposed to having so much resources that we tend to squander them anyway.
Yes. Yeah, interesting perspectives and comparisons. Thankfully, there's not as many like restrictions, I guess, in this area, because about 5 miles from where I'm at, there's a lot of communes and intentional communities, and we do need more of those. I hope, again, because of Starlink and the internet connection and possible for those of you that may be watching, so it's basically there's satellites that are beaming down internet, correct? I mean, that's what Starlink is, so we can get internet to more remote places. Now, you can get that right now with different devices, but it's really expensive.
Yeah.
So they're putting something up that's more reliable and cheaper, because like per gigabaud, it's just, I've checked on the prices, it's just unbelievably expensive, and there's monthly plans and everything. So they're trying to provide more internet. So the reason why I'm behind these buildings back here is because my Scotts Valley house in the mountains is also has horrible internet. It's at the top of the mountain, so I could actually see 3 mountain ranges one direction, 4 the other direction, and we have a satellite that beams from wherever sorry, not a satellite, a dish that like beams to send internet, but it's just inconsistent. It's not good enough. So I've lost opportunities because of not having internet, and that is one thing that's limited me from potentially going out and moving to a rural property, is because I wanted to still have access to the internet so I could reach people like you. So that's cool that you have enough internet connectivity to do this broadcast.
Well, I have enough
I
to do this broadcast. I have
yeah.
had to turn people down that wanted to come here because they work online and they need a video connection, and I can't
Oh,
provide it
okay,
for
right,
very many people. I did
right.
just get an email from Starlink, and they said that I could now make a deposit, and I won't receive it right
Go
away.
ahead.
I could make a deposit on getting Starlink.
Yeah,
Um,
you'll be on that list, maybe prioritized
yeah,
if
yeah,
you
that's
make
probably
the
big
deposit
for
a little
me.
bit.
And this gets back to the question of like, what technology do you want to choose to have? And I think
Mhm.
that connecting with each other is huge. You
Right.
look at the hippies in the 60s, and they were an acid
You
talking
need
about global
connection.
consciousness.
Yeah.
And we now have global consciousness. And boy, is it depressing to realize who we all are and how mean we are and dumb we are and stuff. And we realize that the source of the problems in the world is us. We're the problem. But at least we're
Yeah.
talking to each other now. And I saw that back in
And
the
trying to
80s.
find solutions. Yeah.
I was involved in tech really early on. So I was on the pre-web internet in '85 when it was just government sites and military sites and educational sites.
Wow.
So the whole map of the internet, had a few hundred sites. And so
Right.
I started thinking about, what is happening with us really coming together. And of course, now we've seen this massive explosion where you can walk around somebody's house, you can hear some 14-year-old girl's interpretation of the entire universe. And that's kind of exciting in some cases, often depressing. But we're meeting each other. The world is saying hello to itself. And
Yeah.
that
There's
is,
there's
if there's
even
anything
apps for
optimistic,
that where you see people.
all right, if there's
So
anything
interesting.
optimistic we can have, because I'm a huge doomer. I believe that we're all going to die. I believe civilization is going to collapse. We are so messed up. There are just too many things we've
Unfortunately,
done.
I believe that too, but I keep trying every day because we have too much to lose if we all give up. That's why we're still trying, but we still believe or basically know it's going to collapse. We have too many nuclear power plants at ocean level. We're just consuming beyond Earth's ability to recharge all of these resources.
Right.
We're
I
cutting
mean,
down too much rainforest. We're just doing everything wrong.
right.
Too
We're
much
killing the
fossil
ocean.
fuels
I
into
mean,
the
the ocean
atmosphere.
is the
Yeah,
big one, and we're on the same page on this. If we kill
yeah.
the ocean, if the phytoplankton, whatever
Photoplankton,
they call,
zooplankton. Yeah,
right. If the
the whole
ocean
food chain.
collapses, we die for sure. And
But
that's
it's
just
already
being
collapsing in different
simple. I
places.
know, I
So
know.
we already see it. It's already
Right.
happening, and um,
And
it's
these are really
horrible.
bummer things to say if we only give people these negative messages, because I can be a huge doomer. I'll just go
Yeah.
buy a bottle of tequila and be like, fuck it all. And so I want to find the optimistic path. And I have these crazy pseudo hippie thoughts or whatever about that maybe we can kind of wake up. Maybe we
And
can get this consciousness. Maybe
terraform Earth is what it's called, I think, or like regenerative agriculture and what you're
sure,
doing. And we
sure.
just need a lot of that with this global consciousness, and then start, fixing everything that we've damaged. Start, whether it's the, picking up the pollution, or, putting those bugs that, the grub worms that eat the plastic, and start, putting technologies towards neutralizing radioactive material. And yeah, there's just so many things that we now have to fix. Planting trees, of course, is one of those. We've killed all the soil, all the microbial beneficial bacteria, and all of the mycorrhizal, all of that. So just composting, and we need to transition away from fossil fuels, synthetic chemicals and fertilizers. And yeah, that's causing a huge problem and impacting the potential for carbon sequestration. So a lot of steps. And with this global consciousness and this shift, if everyone starts doing those little things that I mentioned earlier, if you just buy something organic once in a while, if you eat beef a little bit less, if you drive your car one less day, all of these different things, voting with your money. I always hear people like say, oh, it's too expensive to eat organic or just to eat vegetables. It's like, you got like a $1,400 iPhone and this. It's like balance again, and we're out of balance. with our society, and hopefully that balance adjusts and people realize what's valuable and what's important. So I wanted to tell you about some of my projects real quick, because I've done
Good.
like exactly kind of what you're doing, but a little different. So about, let's just say 10 years ago, I took all of those Cabrillo College classes that I mentioned earlier, and I learned as much as I could about construction and green building and horticulture and all of that. So I watched a lot of YouTube videos, and I watched a lot of documentaries. So I just got all this knowledge. So I lived in a house up in Boulder Creek for 5 years. It was in a private neighborhood. I was like in one of the back house areas. So I rented this house. It was like $1,200 a month for like 2-bedroom, really cheap. So I was doing this project with all these things to get all this stuff to buy land, owner will finance or finance, to move on to a property. So I bought this whole like permaculture system and setup, huge. And I was doing kind of what you're doing, but on a smaller scale. So I bought a cargo shipping container that was brand new for $4,000. That was a one trip that came over from like Japan, brand new. And I turned it into a tiny home. So I redid the whole inside and I turned it into a tiny home, and I actually started living in it while I was renting out the 2 bedrooms in my house. So then the whole property turned into a 3-bedroom instead of a 2-bedroom. So it lowered the cost of the $1,200 property, so we were hardly paying anything. So I lived there for 5 years. So on the roof, I put a rainwater catchment system that was connected to the solar hot water heater. I never actually installed the solar hot water heater, but it was there. It was really nice. But I had a solar panel next to that that was going into my the cargo shipping container. There's actually some right here. And then it powered all my stuff. I had a video surveillance system camera on the outside and everything. So inside, I had the sink in the bathroom, the composting toilet, all of that. It was really cool setup. Now, next to that, on the outside, I had a water tank that was about the same size and the same color. It was a green one that was a 550 gallon like yours. That was part of the rainwater catchment. So it was next to the whole thing. Next to that, I had my chicken coop with my rabbits. So I was breeding New Zealand white rabbits. You breed rabbits. And I ate them twice for meat, but I also sold them. But I really wanted to know how to breed rabbits. So when I got property, I knew how to breed them and how to duplicate them for meat and the pellets and all of that. So in that same cage that I built, I had, I think, 4 or 5 chickens for eggs, not for meat, just for eggs. So that was that whole setup. There was a rainwater catchment system on the top of that chicken coop as well. So then I had my aquaponics system running on my deck. I had fish. That thing ran for like a couple of years by itself, and I hardly did any maintenance. It was on a timer, and it would do ebb and flow into those little hydrocomb rocks or whatever. And I would just throw seeds in there and it would grow, and I just pull stuff out. It was really cool. So I had an aquaponics system right there. And then on the other side of that, I had 2 planters. They're about 4 feet by 6 feet. They were raised in wood. Next to that, I had a water tank, maybe this big around, and that was my worm casting composting tea. And I had a little aerator that aerated that for fertilizer. And then around the corner, I built a greenhouse on the side of my house, and that was for my hydroponic system with my tomatoes, and it was all organic and on a timer. And I had the tomatoes, I had 8 of them, and they went in this vine that went, they were like about 9 feet tall, and they kind of like spiraled, and I would move them on this like rack, and every day I would get tomatoes. So aquaponics, hydroponics, regular garden, the chickens and the rabbits, and I had this whole, and I had my composting area. So I learned a lot about how to take this organic material to here, how to take that and water this, how to grow this and feed it to the animals, how to create electricity. So I learned the whole system aspect, and I would go to Costco and buy a lot of organic food, and I would to try to buy them bulk. And I'd go to the farm store and I'd buy the chicken pellets and stuff. So I learned kind of what I needed, but it was more sustainable, and I wanted to take all of that stuff and move it onto some land and then start building a tiny home. Unfortunately, I got distracted. I took all my savings, and then I went to, Iraq, and I went to Ghana and the Philippines and all these other places to do disaster relief. So then I actually moved half of that stuff to another property, and I lived for 3 years there. without the chickens and the rabbits. But I then traveled to the 11 European countries over 6 months to study environmental stuff. So I still lived in the tiny home, and I paid like $400 a month for rent on a little piece of land. And I got to live in a tiny home and the composting toilet and all of that, solar, no electricity, completely off grid. But I never got my dream of taking all those things and moving it. One of the reasons was the property that I wanted to buy was like 1,000 miles away, and it was too much money to ship everything. So I did it the wrong way. In hindsight, I should have bought the property first and then started taking everything to the property and started building up from there. So that's kind of where I'm at now, is to save up money for land and then go that direction, go that route, and then start getting that system back together.
I absolutely love your enthusiasm and your learning process. That this is the important thing, is that there isn't like one correct path. There isn't even one correct solution. And so your adventure, or the adventures that you've been on, yeah, you've gone one way and then you went another way, and what we should build and how we should build it isn't always clear. One of the things I want to warn against is eco assholes. There's a lot of people who, when they first become conscious that we're pretty messed up as a civilization, they get kind of religious about it and they want to attack other people. It's kind of like when somebody becomes vegan or something.
Vegan.
And
the vegans are like that for some reason.
Not all of them, luckily, but when they first get that consciousness, I'm sympathetic. I'm very sympathetic that there's this huge vitriol and understanding that we've been destroyed by past generations and the way we've evolved culturally, but we are where we are now. And so my hope is that we retain a lot of kindness. And what's interesting is in our conversation so far, even though you're a total extremist, right? You are trying to help people, you're trying to change systems, you really care. I haven't heard you say a single really negative thing about individual people. Like, you're not trying to attack them personally. And I like that, because I think we need to seduce them, not attack them. And it doesn't matter.
Because then their guard comes up. Yeah, you don't want their guard to be up. We want them to be
like Leonardo DiCaprio,
okay.
Or Leonardo DiCaprio has some ecological stuff he said, and so some people are like, well, that's hypocritical because you waste energy. Well, he does waste energy. We all do. And he's lending his voice, a very powerful voice, to some causes. And so I'm not going to get first in line to criticize him at all. I'm not an eco asshole. Now, he is in charge of his life and his choices, and he should be the one looking at himself in the mirror and decide what he wants to do. He's in a very different position than either one of us, probably. So,
he's doing this one thing that people don't realize. Now, the best way to explain this, and it's super simple, is taking one step back to take two steps forward. This video call we're doing is using energy.
Yeah.
The megaphone, my tattoo took energy to write climate emergency on my room. When I print, thousands of little paper stickers that say climate emergency or recycle or whatever, that takes resources. But it's to take one step back to take two steps forward. There's not one thing that we could do that's not taking one step back. Like, let's say that you're going to go plant a tree. Well, I'm exhaling oxygen, or not oxygen, carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
Is that correct? So, so there's nothing that I can do that isn't taking one step back. That helps the environment. I mean, even if I hold my breath, then I got to breathe more to make up for it. So everything that we do. So what we have to do is we have to lower our individual carbon footprint, lower our environmental impact, and try to be, more in balance with doing less bad things and more good things. And if we all do that, then Earth's systems will continue to regrow and replenish, because that's what nature is. I mean, that's how trees grow, that's how things grow, and that's how the aquifers might recharge faster, and the trees will grow faster. And it's just, right now we're just destroying things way too fast, beyond Earth's systems to recover. And it's just our impact is just too great, and we're just taking, consuming, throwing away, and just breaking. It's just way too much. It just can't handle it, and that's why we're seeing all these issues.
So let's get really personal. Do your friends, or whatever social group or family, the people you have contact with, how much do you feel like they share your views?
interesting question. So back when I was doing that project at that house that I told you approximately like 10 years ago, while I was at that house for those 5 years, I went to Cabrillo College for about 5 or 8 years. So I took all those courses. So during the beginning of that time at that house, I was on Facebook, on social media. Well, okay, let's just jump a little bit back before that. Trying to do everything to raise awareness with everyone, and everyone's just brain dead and buying stuff, consuming, wasting, littering, everything, just disgusting. Like, and I'm trying to like wake everybody up, just like knowing all the information that I had. Like, you just want to like yell at everybody, tell them, beg, cry, like convince, like
Right.
pay them, like whatever. Like, you guys, what are you doing? So
Right.
I was on, like on other, regarding other forms of activism and reaching larger people. About 10 years ago, living in the house, I was on Facebook, and I was like, hey, you guys, like climate change and, environmental impact, like let's recycle, let's do this, let's do that.
Mhm.
Let's do this basic stuff. Let's do this complex stuff. Like trying so hard. Nobody was listening, like on Facebook at all. So I created an environmental Facebook group, and it said climate something, and I posted pictures and this, and I added everybody. No one cared. I kept trying to do all these things. And I'm just like thinking, like, where is everyone? Like, why don't they care? So I got so frustrated with Facebook and people just not caring. I actually shut it down for like, I don't know, like maybe 2 years or 4 years, a long time. And I was completely off Facebook. And like 2 years went by, 3 years, and then my friend would say, like, hey, Alex, like, why aren't you on Facebook? Like, everything you're doing, you could do better on Facebook. And then more and more people kept telling me the same thing. Alex, just get on Facebook. Like, there's all these people talking about what you're talking about, all these activists doing this and this and this. And then I got back on Facebook after that, like, 2 to 4 year break, however much time went by. And then doing these posts, and I'm like, wow, like everybody's an activist now. And then I was able to find those like-minded people on social media for some reason easier, or more people became conscious and knowledgeable of the crisis.
Probably
So it
both.
definitely
Probably both.
changed in that. Oh yeah, both. Okay, good point. So then it was easier for me to start posting out all my information. And like, I cannot say enough, and there's no doubt in my mind that Facebook has helped me unbelievably with more than I ever imagined. Like, I I found some, like, 4 or 5 years ago, I found some tires in the redwood forest. I saw them on the ground, took some pictures, went to the county building. They gave me a dumpster and permission through Facebook. I said, let's get some volunteers and remove these tires. Within a couple days, it got 300 shares. 5 days after me seeing those tires, 5 days, the county dropped off two 20-foot long cargo shipping container style dumpsters, dropped them off. 30 volunteers came, and 5 sponsors, and we removed 1,000 tires from the redwood forest in the creek ravine in 5 more days. So from day 1 to day 10, I organized through social media five sponsors and 30 volunteers, and we removed 1,000 tires, put them in these dumpsters, and they were taken to the dump. So the power of social media has just been incredible with organizing beach cleanups and organizing environmental projects, talking with like-minded people, doing projects like this, meeting you, Brian, my Patreon, just everything has been through social media. And the key, I said this before, is balance. Like, I could be, wasting my time on all of this stupid things that's just going to dumb me down. Or I can spend my time talking to intellectually like-minded people, people that are receptive, people that are listening, people that are trying to make the world a better place, or even engaging in conversation with anthropogenic global warming deniers and people that are saying there's no pollution, or man, I hear this all the time, man doesn't have the ability to impact Earth. Earth is too big. It's like, so there's just like a lot of misinformation, and just trying to filter through that. So when I'm on social media, I do feel that my time is well spent, from how receptive I've seen people. And my algorithm's really good too. Like, I only click on good things that I want to see that are educational regarding environmental solutions and climate change related solutions. So Facebook only shows me like stuff from like Nature and NPR and BBC and the History Channel or National Geographic or you know NASA, just all of this good content. So I constantly have good content going into my head, not like sports and video games and like card collections or whatever
Right.
people do.
Right.
So
You're basically filtering what you're going to accept, so
yeah,
that builds you up.
so I don't
Hey,
click
hey,
on anything that I
can I
don't.
ask you a personal
Yeah,
question?
yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 40 years old. I
40 years old.
This is really embarrassing, but I could be 41, and I honestly think that I'm 40, but I might be 41. And I because over the last 2 decades, like I mentioned, other than going to school and like some video things like this, I haven't had to wake up at a certain time
Mhm.
or be a certain place unless it's like to catch a flight or do a mission or do a project. So I've been on my own time schedule for a really long time. Like a lot of times I don't know what day of the month it is or what. You probably are the same way, right? I mean, maybe living out
Yeah,
there.
I mean, like people say, have a nice weekend, and like, it's like nothing changes here. The sun doesn't
Right.
know when the weekend is, so
Yeah.
time is very different. And so it's great you've.
Time is, yeah.
I mean, that's some level of success, is to escape from the regimented system, and
I
hopefully, of
try my
course,
best, yeah.
yeah. Well, I find you very exciting to talk to, and you're 40 years old, which is, not old and not completely young. A 19-year-old will tell you you're old, and I'm 54 now, I believe. Uh,
Wow.
and so,
I
I
hope I'm
very,
as healthy as you are when I'm 54.
what's that?
Nice. Yeah, I hope I'm as healthy as you are when I'm 54.
Well,
Yeah, you. I'm sure
you know,
everyone tells you that you look young, and I'm sure the lifestyle habits definitely help.
they probably do, but I broke my legs, right?
No, I wasn't aware of that.
Oh, yeah, a year and a
Horrible.
half ago, I broke both my femur bones in 2 spots each. So that's been a big adventure. So my
And a
recommendation
setback
is
for your project. Okay.
don't fall off a roof.
Right.
So
Oh no.
yeah, but anyway, back to you.
Horrible.
Uh,
Yeah.
I find you very exciting, and I think that your enthusiasm and the diversity of the things you're focusing on has the ability to inspire people where they're at. Because I feel like most people probably feel pretty powerless. They don't have as much time to be flexible, about what they put their energy into. They can't vote with their dollars because or their money, because they don't have that much.
Or they
They're
live in a food desert where there's not a lot of good options and stuff
right.
like that.
And so there's a lot of work to be done in all of us brainstorming and working how we can where we're at. I mean, you look at somewhere like
With what we have,
Bangladesh,
right?
or you went to, did you say Iraq or Iran or somewhere?
Iraq, correct?
Okay, Iraq. Yeah, I mean, you have a whole different problem set if you're growing up in rural Iraq, and what your abilities to affect change are. But I think that all of us, wherever we're at, can do a lot, and especially the people in the U.S. and Europe who are used to using a lot of resources. I mean, like where I come from the Seattle area. The houses are built in a horrible way. All of them, if you want to be comfortable, you need to use a lot of energy. I mean, I lived in a 1901 house with zero insulation in it, zero. So it got
Wow.
down, like in the low 40s, and I had, housemates and stuff, and I was renting to them, and they were like, "This is not okay." And I was like, "You're right, it's not okay. This sucks." And it's an architectural problem, actually.
Yeah.
And so in 1901, what they did was they were just uncomfortable. They were used to that. It was okay, and we don't want to be that uncomfortable.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so
quality of life's important as well. And yeah.
yeah. So anyway, but back to you. So I'm thrilled with your variety of projects. I'm going to ask you about one other project which you just recently started, as far as I can tell. And I like the scale of it. It's so tiny, and that is
Okay.
tiny little houses for homeless people. And I would like to say, before I ask you about this, that in an ideal world, there wouldn't be any homeless people. And I believe that we
Right.
can change things so that we can fix the core underlying problem. In this case, you're attacking the symptom. So can you give me the brief overview on that project?
Yeah. So again, our society is out of balance. We're continuing to see the divide between the rich and the poor, and we're seeing a lot of homeless people, even here, in America. So I live in California. There's a lot of homeless people here. people in my community blame, this and that and whatever. So I think one of the main problems is capitalism. I mean, we continue to make the rich richer, the poor get poorer. Our tax system it isn't set up the way that it should. There's billionaires that are just continuing to make a lot of money. Minimum wage is just really low, and it's just not the way things should be. So universal basic income would help that. I think that more tiny homes would be a huge solution. So I think some of the main things would be universal basic income, more tiny homes, affordable tiny homes, hopefully they're sustainable, and more mental health workers. So regardless of what's causing the homelessness, around the world or in my region, I created a micro tiny home. Now it's a micro because it's smaller than a tiny home. And I did this because I wanted to have I wanted to use my skill sets, like, you asked my age, being 40 years old, what can I do with my skill sets to help solve homelessness? Now, I have done a lot of construction in the past. I know, PR and marketing. I know website design, graphic design, designing stuff, building, working with my hands, communication, all of these things. So I put all this stuff together because I saw a problem. The problem is homeless people sleeping on the sidewalk, sleeping in door wells, sleeping in the rain, just really harsh conditions. That's just not moral for us just to leave them there. It's not civilized. And my tiny home, my micro tiny home, was a temporary solution, so they can get housing. Because no one's going to be able to get housing if you get a bad night's sleep, if you're dirty, if you're cold, if you're hungry, if your body doesn't have a chance to heal. So you just don't have a good day the next day. If Sorry, I'm getting jealous. You're drinking coffee maybe or something. I haven't had coffee yet this morning. I'm gonna get coffee after this. Okay, so micro tiny homes, it's like this cool structure that I built. It's maybe like half the size of a car. Now it's really popular. Everyone loves it. I'm like hardly getting criticized at all. Just a couple of people here and there, but it's really popular in my community and it's taking off fast. So this micro tiny home that I created is composed of wood that's from FSC, certified lumber. It stands for Forest Stewardship Council. So I tried to make it green. It's like this structure that has a door that opens upwards, hydraulic struts, so it opens up like the trunk of your car. It's insulated on the inside. So the insulation is actually a composition of recycled compressed material, and then there's wheels on the bottom so it could be rolled. There's a vent on the side, a solar panel on the roof so people can plug in their devices, charge their phone, some of the basic stuff. There's a lock on it so the homeless people can lock their belongings in it, lock their stuff in it so they can go use the bathroom, get something to eat, pick up prescription medications, do important things they got to do without pushing around a shopping cart or be worried about someone stealing their stuff. The structure is able to be locked up somewhere, so then someone can't just roll it away. It could be attached to a bike and pulled with a bike. The new designs will have slightly larger tires. So this structure that I created is basically designed to sleep one person, even though a recent couple they were sleeping in these things together. So it's a really cool thing. And I've been homeless before, and I've been downtown, and I've been cold, and I've bought a bike park card, to get into a bike locker, and I've slept in a bike locker a few times because when it's raining and it's cold and it's freezing and you don't want your friends and family to see that you're sleeping on the sidewalk, it's a nice warm safe place. So it's like that, but it's a step up. I paint them silver so they look cool. There's a little window on the side so they could see out, and it's like a lot of like really interesting angles, so it's more aesthetically pleasing, so people don't see a tent, they see it looks better than a tent, looks better than someone sleeping on the ground. And it provides warmth, security, safety, privacy, dignity. It just like helps the person. And the first person I got in one, he was in a wheelchair. He had COPD, congestive heart failure. He lived in it for 3 or 4 weeks and then got housing and then moved out. The one that I just got someone into, the woman's about 30, 35 years old. And my girlfriend and I moved her into it because she doesn't want to have to sleep with every person that invites her, you know, to stay over at the house. And she was homeless. She doesn't want to sleep on the streets. So now she's been living in this for about 3 days. It's actually the unit the first guy lived in, and now she's living in it. So so she can lock her stuff, she can go take care of stuff. She's in like a relatively well-lit area where there's some apartments close by, and we're just trying to give it to high priority people that are elderly, disabled, in a wheelchair, handicapped, mentally ill, women for safety reasons. So we're trying to find high priority people that'll benefit from these. So far I've built 2, but the cool thing is all of my information and the design schematics are open source on my website, so
Awesome.
people can download those and learn it. Now, a couple weeks ago, a construction worker from San Jose called me, hour-long conversation. He wanted to start building them. Then like 2 or 3 days after that, in San Jose, someone else called me, wanted to build it. Also does construction. He's in the Army, United States National Guard or Armed Reserve, something like that. I think the Armed Reserve, if that's different than National Guard, Armed Reserve, I'm not sure. And he works for the NASA Ames Research Center right over there in Mountain View. That's his current job. So he does designs and all this. So he had construction experience and, you know, solid guy with all this knowledge and good skill sets. So I teamed both of them up together. The NASA guy, I had a 2-hour conversation with him. So gave him all this information. They teamed up. They're actually meeting up today, right now. They bought all of the supplies and they're building their first micro tiny home for the homeless people in San Jose. It's so
Beautiful,
awesome.
man.
So they're doing the same design and all of the same parts that I have on my website.
Right.
He bought like perfectly. He showed me the pictures. Is this the right wheels? Is this the right, you know, door? And it's really cool.
Sure.
So
This is
hopefully
a
that works
beautiful
out.
thing you're saying. And the
Yeah,
words open source, for those of you who don't know what
really
that
important.
is, you should learn about it. When I say that the world is saying hello to itself, part of that is that we're sharing ideas that inspire us to have new ideas.
Sharing solutions.
And yeah, and we can really start to develop an entirely new world. And if you want to look for optimism, even though we're maybe a couple of doomers, if you want to look for optimism, it's going to be from that. It's going to be from those kind of ideas where you come up with a micro tiny home thing, and then somebody else takes their technology and improves it, and then it spreads to another culture, and then somebody else takes the idea and does another thing, and we might actually be able to make a better world. You know, I want to envision that. I really need to, and I think right now especially, people are pretty upset in the world. Their faith is shaken in the systems that they trusted. They don't trust what their parents believed in, and I don't blame them. You know, if you really look at what's going on in the world, you should lose faith in civilization, and then be kind of bummed out maybe. But the next step is to develop faith in something new, and
realize you can't give up. We have a lot of work to do.
it's do or die. You know, and it's definitely an option of suffering or not suffering at this point. I mean, right now there's people trapped in apartments that can't go out due to various reasons, you know, the pandemic, et cetera, and
Yeah.
there's economic changes happening, and a lot of those we can look at as really horrible, or we can say, oh my God, this is going to inspire us to do great things. And so when I think of your micro tiny home, yeah, it's a reaction against things that shouldn't be happening in the first place, but that's so caring, you know, and it really matters to some people. So I
Oh, it's
already looked at
definitely
your
helping
feed.
out those people.
Yeah, I looked at your
Yeah,
feed,
thank you.
and you're caring for individuals. You know, it's not demographics, it's not identity politics or anything like that. It's like this person needs a place so they're not getting rained on and freeze to death. And the next news article we see about them is, you know, notifying their family they're dead because of dumbass reasons. And that person may have had some value. They probably did. So, and by the way, with all this stuff he's talking about and the stuff I talk about, we'll put links to all this stuff in the description. So you can go and you can Enviralize, I believe, is your Facebook group.
Right, correct.
And I've seen your tiny homes on there. I do like the angles, by the way. I'm glad you mentioned that. I was going to mention it if you didn't, because it looks kind of cool. Like I would sleep in that, you know.
So
So
I
you're
did
gonna,
those angles for a couple of reasons. One of them is so when it's pulled from behind a bike, it's aerodynamic. One of the reasons is like a tent. If you think of the or just if you just think about the sorry, how do I say this? The interior surface area,
Mhm.
if you don't need it as big where your feet go, so that's why
Right.
it goes lower. So in colder areas your body heat will warm up it faster than if it was really large, and it doesn't get super cold here in Santa Cruz, but there's literally people calling me up from different areas that are like freezing temperatures, and one person called me from Oregon where it does get really cold. So that's another reason why I chose those. And in the back of my mind, I kind of thought like, oh, well, if I'm going to do all these angles, maybe I'll just paint it silver so it'll get the attention of Elon Musk and some of these rich, wealthy people, so it can help them, visually see, oh, well, we have the Tesla Cybertruck, and this kind of looks like a Cybertruck, and it's for someone to live. It helps raise awareness of that divide. And just now, when you were talking about open source, I'm not sure if you're aware, because you could be the most brilliant person in the world, but all of us only know so much. There's no one knows everything. So there's so much information, and that's why we have these discussions to share and trade information. And so you were just talking about open source. So to the best of my knowledge, Elon Musk is doing a lot of his stuff open source, and that's really honorable, because he's like giving, when he finds out like a battery technology, he gives it open source, not because he does, to the best of my knowledge, he wants to solve climate change and he wants solutions. So when he comes up with this solution or something that's more energy efficient or more environmental or works better, he does keep that open source to other, especially with the batteries, I think, in the battery technology, because he wants other people to create electric cars. And it's the future. And there's good and bad things about electric cars, but we can't stop them. It's going to happen one
Yeah,
way or another. I think small electric cars will be the future,
that's
smaller personal
a really
vehicles.
important point. And it's affects me quite a bit because I write a lot on Quora for free, and I make videos for free.
Okay.
And many people have told me we should charge free information. And I understand their goal because they're trying to help me. They want me to make some money, and I do need it. But
Patreon. That would solve your
I,
situation.
I
Have
do
a
have,
Patreon
I
account.
do have a Patreon, and I think I make
Oh, okay, cool.
$4 more a month than you do right now, but which is not much because we both need to do better on that. So
Yeah.
one reason to do this video is to introduce people to our ideas and show kind of different paths and maybe excite them. So I hope you get more patrons out of this. I'll put a link, of course, and I hope I do as well. But um, the idea of giving away your knowledge, I think, is very attractive because if someone copies your idea, it doesn't hurt the value of what you have, right? That didn't hurt your garden or whatever you got. It didn't hurt your dog. And so if we come up with these ideas and we all share them, we become wealthy intellectually, philosophically, and we can get the tiny tweaks on so many systems to make them actually work better. So I'm
Right.
very excited by introducing to people the idea of open source. Creative Commons is another one that's kind of like open source, but you get credit for it.
Okay.
Nice because we're all egoists in some sense. At least I am.
Yeah, and we're all in this together. That's why open source is so important.
Right.
Like we're on a planet. Like we can't go anywhere. Like we all have to lower our carbon footprint. All of us,
Right.
like collectively. Whether it's this person did it by 1%, this person did it by 50%, you did it by like 97%. Yeah, we all have to like lower our carbon footprint as much as possible.
Right.
So sharing that information is important. Videos like this, I mean, yeah, we could charge or we could try to get this information out. But again, we don't want to miss those people that can't pay, or we don't even want to miss 10 people that could. We don't want to miss anyone.
Right.
The information that we have, environmental solutions, needs to be widespread. It needs to be systemic, and it needs to happen fast. We don't
Yeah.
have a lot of time.
Yeah. And so I want to help everybody do it. And in terms of ego, like you made micro tiny houses. I like your design. It's great. And the fact that people are copying you is awesome. That means you had a good idea, and you kind of get these like karmic gold stars, you know.
Yeah.
You may be only able to
Right.
build a certain number of them, but if
Right.
100 people copy you and they all build them, and that helps other people, your karmic gold
Right.
stars goes up. It's like a multi-level marketing karmic.
Writing exponentially, I hope. That's what happens with good ideas.
Yeah.
Can I say two more points?
Yeah.
One of the reasons why it's the size that it is, I didn't mention this. The initial one was had a frame, and then the plywood went on the frame. That was version 1. That was the prototype. The second version, which is basically flawless. I don't know how I got it right on the second version, but there's like hardly nothing I'll change. The second version is the exoskeleton, similar to the Cybertruck. So that one doesn't have the internal frame. Now, the reason why it's the size that it is because I tried to think like, should I make it out of clay or, you know, sheetrock or glass or bamboo, or what are some of the other building materials? Come on, basic brick, concrete, plastic, all of these different building materials. Too much energy goes into concrete, plastic off gases, toxins, like all these different pros and cons. I chose plywood because it's generally universally available around the world. But the reason it's the size that it is because there's no internal frame, since it's the exoskeleton. So the side and the roof is literally the very maximum length and size that I can get out of a piece of plywood, minus those little cuts. So that's why I didn't make it bigger. And it's kind of cool that um, even in the bottom, it's long enough for someone to sleep that's probably 5'7", 5'9". You know, and I'm 5'4", so I could sleep in it easily. But that's kind of the size. And one unforeseen advantage to the angles that I thought when I was initially building it, but I had no idea that it would work. Okay, so one of the things is like, you know, the water repels off, you know, that's the angle of the roof, but it fits in the back of my Prius. It might only fit by 3 inches, and it hangs out by, you know, 5 feet, but it fits in enough that I can strap it down, and I have moved them multiple times in my Prius, and it's a lot more convenient than me going all the way to U-Haul and renting a truck, and then, you know, driving a big fossil fuel burning vehicle all of the time, the money, having to leave my vehicle and the extra. So it's kind of cool how that worked out. I don't know if you saw that picture, so I could transport them that way as well. Eventually, I want to get a trailer that goes on the back of my car so I can move them like that. And I could advertise the microtinyhome.com website on the side of it to help raise awareness of the project in different areas that I, you know, visit with my car. And if I'm out, I could sleep in it instead of my car. So maybe I'll just move into one, you know, in the long term.
Fantastic, man. I think we've covered that pretty well. I think it's exciting. Yeah. I would recommend anyone go take a look. I want to change the topic a little bit.
Yeah.
So you use the word capitalist, and you use vocabulary, some of which I agree with or don't. And I don't even know what capitalism is. I'll tell you that.
Wait, sorry, I heard that. I missed that last sentence.
I don't know, with some term, like use the word capitalist, right, as a bad thing, or capitalism. And you're in favor of universal basic income. I'm not. And so we have some differences in terms of our philosophy and economics. I'm concerned, even like I hesitate almost to bring it up, right? Because we're having a good time and we're bouncing our ideas. I wish we were on a campfire.
No problem.
And by the way, you're welcome to campfire anytime. We have a great time.
Yeah.
I don't, because I have friends who call themselves capitalists, but they're talking about freedom and they're talking about owning yourself and your own labor, which oddly enough is what communists talk about, and owning means production and stuff. And so it's kind of, I feel like these words divide people, you know, and I know what you're referring to. You're referring to this totally corrupt thing with fake money and things that jerk people.
Yeah, exactly.
And steal
That's my version of it, right?
Yeah, and I hate that shit.
printing money, buying stuff, the divide, the tax system, the structure, people suffering, child labor, bad working conditions, chemicals in different countries, just so the rich get richer, whatever that structure is, I guess it's a part of capitalism. So maybe capitalism isn't the problem, but the way it's structured with the whole GDP and like, there's something out of balance. I think we both agree that we like the barter system. The barter system is pretty cool. Like we got to do more of that. But I wish that we didn't use money at all. But how? So what parts of the capitalism do you like, or what parts do you think that are not working with the? What's your take on capitalism then, from
Well, I
your
don't
perspective?
know, and and I've read a lot of stuff during my life, and I've taken economic classes and talked to people. The main thing is that I think some of these terms are so polluted that we're not having the same conversation, and we can't. And so,
Okay.
if someone says they're a capitalist or an anti-capitalist, I don't know if I agree with them or not. And there's a bunch of other terms that I feel like I call them polluted terms, right? Where if we
Right.
label someone something, and people are doing a lot of that lately, if you're labeled the wrong way, then you're just Satan. You're just the evilest person in the world. And I say a lot of extreme things, and I've become a little bit more cautious lately about that. But um, in terms of capitalism in particular, like I'm fairly in favor of free trade, but like I don't think, for example, that I think people should be able to destroy soil and the planet. Like shared, I believe that the air is shared, the water is shared. These are the commons. So we get back to old experiments with how we share resources and how we don't, and who owns anything. So the shorter answer is I'm confused. I'm not stupid, and I don't like when people tell me I'm ignorant because I'm not even close. But they say all this political rhetoric, and everybody seems to be attacking each other and hating on each other. Even good friends of mine who I thought were loving, good people, and they probably sort of are, but god damn, like certain words just trigger them, and they just become like rabid dogs. And I've been dealing with some dog fights lately, and the dogs just flip a switch in their head, and all of a sudden they're just going at each other, and then there's blood, and it's horrible. I mean, we're living in a horrible time where nice people are attacking people in the industrial world. Around here people are nice to each other because there's no reason not to be. It's like the
Yeah.
wild.
What do you got to argue about there? Yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess on a bigger philosophical level, I'm sad. I think I'm sad. I'm really sad that people are so fucking mean and stupid. Although I shouldn't even call them stupid because, I don't want them to call
That's mean.
me either.
Yeah.
I just said that. And it's like we're just
Yeah.
operating in these little worlds we're in and then
Yeah.
bouncing against each other. And so like, you say universal basic income, and I'm like, I'm against that. And I'm very much in favor of experiments with it. Let's try it out. And there have been some really interesting ones, and there's been studies on it, and it's very great.
Right.
And we probably both agree that money is totally fake, and it's manipulative and wrong. And the Federal Reserve, and we went off the gold standard with Nixon, I believe. Anyway, just I don't know. And for me, I'm actually on some sites that are conservative sites.
Hmm.
And also kind of asshole sites, since a lot of those people have been kicked off other sites because they're saying things that are too extreme. Gab is one of them. And so I have accounts on those. I don't read them regularly, but I've been a little cautious. I use my real name, and that's a little scary too. I mean, I'm out there. I mean, so are you. You put yourself out there to the world. You can be judged. You probably get, I don't know if you get death threats. I get them.
I
But
got a lot last year. Yeah.
yeah, and it's from people you don't really want to
Not
meet.
so many lately. Yeah.
And you probably don't have a lot of respect for them. And I mean, anybody who's going to criticize you for a like micro tiny home is like, what the fuck? I mean, yeah, it's a limited solution, but you got to do what you can do for the person standing in front of you. I mean, and so it's like,
It's a
I'm
humanitarian crisis now. Yeah. Exactly.
great. And so we got to deal with the problem we're in. And so like, I'm not conservative. I'm not liberal. I used to think I was more liberal. Maybe I'm classic liberal, which isn't apparently liberal. I don't know. All these words are so fucked up. Sorry. They're so polluted that all they do is divide us. And it makes me very upset because we're not going to get out of this if we just attack each other. you know? Anyway, I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't have a bigger point except that I don't know what to do, man. I really don't.
So it does seem like there's a lot of issues going on around the world, and there's areas of expertise, and then some people that don't really know anything. Okay, so I don't know that much about the whole Black Lives Matter movement because that's not my area of expertise. Like I try to focus on environmental solutions, climate change, and all that. Now I am smart enough to know that everything's interconnected. And being 40 years old, I know a little bit about everything, but again, that's not my area of expertise. There are certain subjects like the LGBTQ thing. I don't know anything about that. There's certain like subjects. So people could get mad at me or offended if I, say something like I even said something recently that was I said someone, I just gave someone a micro tiny home that was wheelchair bound, and someone attacked me and said, "No, you can't say that. Like they're not wheelchair bound." And then he started posting all over social media. Alex is saying that this guy's wheelchair bound. You can't say that. It's like, okay, so I don't know how to correctly respond, or like I just didn't know that. So um, again, that's not my area of expertise. I don't work with disabled people, and see, I don't even know if that's the right thing to say. So it's hard saying things without offending people.
Right.
Now, with what you were talking about with capitalism, see, personally, take economics. I don't know that much about the financial system, other than some of the basic stuff that I've learned throughout my life. The printing money and credit and debt and like banks and like I guess the basic stuff. And I'm a halfway intelligent person, but again, I would think like capitalism is a problem, but you have a different perspective because of the information you have. So yeah, that's
I don't,
where we got to
I
meet
don't know what
people
it
like
is.
halfway.
I
And
don't know what the word
um,
even means. And it's not
yeah,
that I'm dumb, okay?
right,
I mean, I don't know what the word anarchism means.
right.
I don't know what these words mean. Certainly, yeah. Anyway, I don't even want to say any words because, and
Yeah.
you've mentioned that you have some experience with people judging you based on just even trying to say basic terms, but your heart's in the right place, and you're actually your physical work is doing things that are good. And so I don't know what's out there, and I live out in the middle of the woods. I have very little social contact, and so most of what I see is social media, and that's probably lowered my opinion of humanity pretty harshly. Um, so I used to live in the city, and I had friends around me and things like that, and it was very nice. Of course, I have other luxuries here, and I want to bring other
Mhm.
people here, and I have big visions for this place. But it it seems, I don't know, like I think we're seeing some of the basic evil of humanity, the kind you would expect from adolescents or people going through puberty attacking each other or something. Just like I want to talk with philosophers. I want to talk with not even that. I just want I think kindness is more important than everything else. And that seems like such a dumbass result to come to after 54 years of adventure and study and things. But I think that just empathy and kindness are the
Yeah,
only.
studying philosophy would help work towards some of these solutions. And I don't know why they don't have philosophy taught in like elementary school, middle school, high school. I don't, maybe they start teaching philosophy in high school, but if more of us knew, the difference between morals and ethics and values and all of this to be a better person and what's right and wrong, I think that would help make the world a better place. I'm sure they teach that in some countries, but yeah, there's a lot of divide going on. Maybe because we're all unhappy. We see these things that we're not happy about, and it might be something that's sexist or racist, or I get upset from environmental issues and people polluting or littering and all of this. So maybe we're just not happy, and through the power of social media. Maybe people can hide behind their computers more and teaming up, or groups. Maybe that's why they're starting to form like alliances and groups, and like-minded people are joining, and then they're seeing clashes and differences. So yeah, just finding commonalities in between cultures. And I don't think there's a place in our society for sexism and racism and a lot of this hate, but there's it's still systemic. And yeah, it is. It's causing a lot of divide, and politics is causing a lot of divide. But we have to have universal understanding. I want to take this opportunity to mention the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Those are some of the basic things the United Nations is working towards to solve. The Rotary Club, from looking at their initial statements, are duplicating a lot of the United Nations sustainability goals, or they seem similar in a lot of ways. And the United Nations is thankfully now, I think the United States just rejoined, or they're attempting to rejoin. Now, the United Nations, I've actually spoke at the United Nations headquarters in Vienna, Austria. It was like one of 5 of the main headquarters around the world. I had to go through a lot of security clearance, and I was in there. I was in a conference for a week and just meeting people from around the world. And there's I really, really, really respect the United Nations and what they're doing and how they're trying to solve a lot of these issues. And I think just trying to they help solve a lot of conflict, and they look at things from a global perspective, not just from like, I live here and I see this. And another word that's 2 words that would help is cognitive dissonance, where people can't get new information, and that is a problem. And also cultural relativism. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the term cultural relativism, but for the viewers now, this might not be the accurate definition.
Relativism, right?
Cultural relativism.
Relativism.
Relativism, cultural relativism,
Relativism.
relativism. Yeah,
Relativism.
can't say that word today, but you said it correctly. Nice. My speech impediment just kicked in. Okay, so what it means is like, if all the people in your bubble, in your circle, everyone that you know, all agrees on a certain thing, and they have a certain like idea, concept, mindset, feeling towards something, then that's like what they think is true. And then if they see, individual or another group that they don't know, then it causes those clashes. So I've seen this is also like when you go to a different country, you're supposed to adapt to that area, to their like, if they wear hats, if they don't, if they have the thing over their face or whatever, you have to adapt to that area, because those are the customs, the laws. And I wouldn't like come to your area and start like breaking your laws and rules and the way you are, because that's your. So I think people are kind of like teaming up and grouping together, and it's just causing more divide, because they only know with their circle of friends and the people. And
Right.
just because not everyone's getting outside of their bubble, and we're trying to connect through the worldwide internet, and it's happening, but some people I think are just closed-minded to new information. And I think that might be what's causing that, not seeing other perspectives and other just other
Right.
perspectives.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because we culturally evolved to be in the culture that we were in, and geographically, you were only a extreme weirdo to go somewhere else. And if you went somewhere else, they'd be suspicious of you, because why the hell did you leave your people, and who are you showing up here? And so now people can connect with other people, and they can have kind of cultural silos, intellectual silos.
And international travel too, in the
Right,
internet, yeah.
which is both really awesome and potentially totally dangerous, that I can connect up
Right.
with a bunch of people who agree with me on my very specific set of 100 issues, and then we can all decide that the other people are bad. And so we could have things that like nations used to do, or maybe races or groups of people used to do, we can now do it intellectually, and we can damage each other. That's a frightening notion. And it's what's happening, I think. I think you're right.
Yeah, there's something going on, and I guess it has to do with I'm guessing it's the pros and cons of international travel, international trade, and the connection of international. I mean, we just have all these people and groups of people that aren't staying in their groups, and yeah, they're going outside, and it's just probably confusing a lot of people to have new people in their groups and people and seeing new
Mhm.
information. And it's going to continue to happen as we continue to see more global heat waves in different regions around the world that cause food shortages, or hopefully not with you, and water insecurities, and rising ocean sea levels. That's going to displace people and cause more climate refugees around the world. So we're going to see more people attempting to cross borders and relocate to different places around the world, and that's going to cause even more issues, such as what we're just talking about. I also think that stretch of Mexico, I think, whether it's in 5 years or 25 years, there's going to be a lot of people flowing through that strip, whether it's to try to go south or go north. I just I think yeah, because I just think the equator is going to be become more increasingly hot, and I think it might, I don't know that. Have you thought about the long-term aspects of, regional heat waves, like not for like 5 or 10 years, but maybe
Oh,
10 or 20 years
or 100 years or whatever.
or 100 years?
No,
Yeah,
I very
further
much,
out.
I selected this place very much based on climate. Mesoamerica, kind of Mexico, basically, what's now Mexico.
Okay.
Um, Tenochtitlan was one of the biggest cities in the world at one time. And so we're looking at a climate that is very protected from most
Okay.
very bad problems. Like when there's a hurricane on the coast, I just get some rain and some wind. Maybe
Okay.
lose some roof tiles or something. But so I moved here specifically because it was very protected. Now, extreme
Right.
climate change, I don't think it's that easy to predict what will happen. Like, is
Right.
northern Canada going to become like very habitable and pleasant? Uh,
Or for how long and all that. Right.
right. And so, and then is there going to be an ice age after that? And so, how far out do we want to look? I mean, are we talking
Right.
about 7 generations out, in our planning? And we
And if you look that far, where is safe anyways? Yeah, it's like
yeah,
you're excluding, yeah,
yeah,
most places anyway. So, and
yeah.
that goes back to like why we'll probably see more migrations of people in different places around the world. And I just one of the main things that we all know is going to happen, like without any doubt, is the oceans rising. Like we can't stop the glaciers from melting. So I do think we should stop building anything at low elevation areas that are susceptible to rising ocean sea levels. And then all the hurricanes in America, we're doing so many things wrong, and we're starting to like build seawalls and do all these things to try to mitigate the damage instead of putting money towards long-term solutions. Like instead of us all building all these seawalls around the world, $1 million hit here, $500 million there, if we just took all that money and put it towards carbon sequestration or planting more trees, or
Yeah.
more energy efficient vehicles and insulating homes or anything like that, it would it's better
About
for the long term.
I think if I know the number, I think it's like 80% of the world's population lives in places on the coast, which are
It's
dangerous.
super high percentage. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly, but I heard it a few weeks ago too. And I was like, yeah, that's a lot. There's 444, maybe it's 446 nuclear reactors around the world too. I don't remember that exact number, but it's over 100 that are located. I just searched that too. I try not to say it because I don't like putting out false information. There is like 444 to 446 nuclear reactors. I don't remember how many are at ocean level, but it takes like 50 years to decommission those, and the ocean level's rising. And then when you incorporate like, superstorm with storm tide or high tide, it's just going to be catastrophic. I mean, we have like nuclear reactors right on like that tip of Florida, like, right? It's just a matter of time. It's not like if it's going to happen, it's just when, unless we start decommissioning it right now. And then we got that, 30 to 50 year window that we hope it doesn't get hit. So we need to implement a lot of solutions fast. So what other solutions do you have? You have your property, you got your sustainability, you got your rabbits. Do you have any chickens there for eggs?
Yeah.
The other animals?
Yeah. After my accident, I gave all my chickens away. I only have two chickens at the moment, but there's only two people here at the moment.
Okay.
Um, I have a lot of knowledge I've gained over the years of of how to have systems work well, but mostly things are pretty quiet and shut down. I'm not accepting a lot of people. I do get inquiries from people who want to come, and some of them are people who don't believe the pandemic exists, and uh,
Right.
that's fine for them. I think it does exist. Like them, I do not agree with all of the government response to it. I'm very individual rights oriented, and so there's a whole mix of thoughts around that. But so I'm kind of riding out the pandemic at the moment and keeping things quiet. I
Right.
have done some really good work lately on park designing, kind of food forest farming design and implementation. So I'm working with my local friends there's a town over there, about 400 people live there. And so we're doing plant reproduction and planning for how we can improve that, like do 10 times more than we do and stuff like that.
Wow.
So, because we want to fill this just with all the best plants, not just for humans, but for animals as well, because part of it's wildlife restoration.
And biodiversity and
Yeah.
other aspects. So not
Exactly,
just for food production. Okay.
exactly. So
Um,
I don't want to be too human focused on it. Um,
right.
and day to day, yesterday there was a big dog fight and there was blood, and that's annoying. And I'm trying to be motivated to give a shit about reality, because it's frustrating, and
Yeah.
I'm lonely like a lot of people, you know. And of course, I've created my own lifestyle where it's pretty lonely. But I don't know. It's a very strange adventure I'm on here. It's not like anyone else's life I know of. Even like Thoreau, Thoreau's famous for going to Walden Pond or whatever. He was
No,
only
I'm
there
sorry,
for a
not
short
familiar.
time. I mean, that was a little tiny experiment.
Mhm.
And so it does occur to me that 17 years on almost, and so I got to think, what's my next phase with this project? And I'm going to
Right.
look for help. I'm going to look for sponsors. I'm doing crowdfunding like you are, and thinking how that will work. I need to up my game. I need to, for example, make more open source resources on how to make composting toilets the way I think they should be made. And then other people, of course, can build on that and change the design and share that. Uh, so I don't know. Talking to you gives me hope that there's other people out there like me. And that's why I was excited by the message I first saw that you wrote,
Cool.
because you're taking
Awesome.
personal responsibility for you. And there's so many people who don't do that. They just want to blame somebody else and they want free shit, and they think the government's going to solve anything. And it's like, no, it's us. We are the government now. We are the future. And
And
everything,
we got to vote with our money.
yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
do what we can because there's a lot of us. Yeah, we have a lot of solutions, and yeah, conversations like this. So earlier in our conversation, you said, well, not everyone has access to vote with their money or do this and that. Well, one of the second best things that you can do, or maybe one of the best things, is just having conversations like this. Talking to someone like-minded, not like-minded, just to start interacting with other people, talking about climate and solutions. So on that property, I mentioned Nepal cactuses, and I used to have a plant nursery, so I used to make copies of goji berries, blackberries, figs, grapes, and Nepal cactuses and aloe vera. So maybe those six. And I liked all those because you just cut them and put them in the dirt. It's easy, you know. You don't got to do any of the grafting and seeds. And so Nepal cactuses, I have had a lot of them. I really like Nepal cactuses, and I try to promote them, and I've given them away because they're drought tolerant. They're fire resistant. You can use them for like security to like block certain areas. You could eat the the green part for like a vegetable, and then the other parts like a fruit. They seem really resilient to insects, and they're easy to duplicate. And there's like oh, and maybe they even produce oxygen. So if you have them indoor, not sure about that one, but there's just I just love Nepal cactuses. So I'm just curious, do you have Nepal cactuses on your property
That's
where
five.
you're at?
I have 5 species. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And do you harvest them for the palm or whatever it's called, or do you let them grow or?
Yeah, well, they have prickly pears is the usual English term for the fruit.
Okay,
In Spanish, they're called a tuna, and they're little kind of oblong fruits that happen.
right.
And
Yeah.
each species has a different one. So some of them are kind of
Right.
bitter, some of them are sweet. One of
Oh,
them,
I didn't know that.
yeah,
Cool.
there's ones that are like blood red, and if you eat it,
Yeah.
then you look like a vampire because there's like all this red juice coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
pretty
cool.
cool. So yeah,
Yeah, I just learned something new.
and like you said, they're easy to reproduce. You just cut one of the petals off and dump it on the ground, and it'll grow.
Yeah.
And so this gets back into like food security issues of like, let's grow
Yeah.
lots of stuff everywhere, even if it's not our favorite food, that if there was a
Right.
disaster, we can eat it.
That's one that I think everyone should grow because, again, fire resistant, drought
Right.
tolerant. I mean, you could eat it. I mean,
Yep.
I don't know why more people just don't have like. If I was you, I'd be cutting them every chance that I could and spread them out. And the reason I think it's better to do that, even though if you leave it on the plant, it grows. But when you cut it, you have it in more locations, and it increases the surface area than it just going upwards. So I think if you cut it, it might duplicate more, and then that might be a way that you can make money if you ever cut them. Here they're $19 for those in a little pot. I don't know if they would buy them there, but you were selling that you drove into town for rabbits, but I mean they probably wouldn't. They'd probably be a lot cheaper where you're at. Just
Nobody
thinking about
here
resources.
in a place that isn't wealthy, there's a lot of things nobody's going to buy. I mean, nobody's going to buy
Right.
them all here.
Right. They're probably everywhere. They can probably cut them and dig them up and see
Right.
them, growing wild.
I can encourage people in the area I live in to plant things that they don't care about as much.
Hmm.
There's Malabar gourds I grow that no one cares about. There's a variety of things I do that aren't profitable. And
Okay.
this gets into the weird nature of this project is I could do things that are profitable. I could set up like a eco resort, for example, and I could host people
Right.
that want, high thread count sheets and stuff. And it's just not my philosophy.
Right.
So a lot of what I'm doing, and this is one of the reasons I want to look for outside support, just doesn't get the quick money. I mean, I
Right.
plant walnut trees.
Right.
I'll probably never see a walnut in my lifetime come off that walnut tree.
But the roots will go deep in the ground too, so it'll access the water a lot deeper and
Sure.
provide shade and help the
Right.
ecosystem. It'll do a lot of good things.
And so along with nopals, there's a whole list of other plants. And I have a spreadsheet of almost 400 species now that I have here, where each one has its own strategy of what we could do in its environment. And I'm against irrigation. I don't think irrigation is a good way to go. Now, if
Because
you
you
look
want to
at,
do it naturally, you
I
want
want
it
to do it
to
with the natural rain
food
cycle.
forest. Okay.
If it cannot survive with the natural rain cycle, then it's not compatible with my kind of extreme agricultural views. Now, if
Yeah.
you look at something like pistachios or almonds or something in
I
California,
consume a lot of water. Yeah,
they're
which is
using tons of
ridiculous.
water, and
Yeah.
it isn't actually long-term sustainable.
Right.
So there's a lot of choices to be made there. I don't know. It's very complex, and this is I guess something I want to say. I'm getting a little tired here. We've been talking for a
Okay.
long time, and I've been
Yeah.
enjoying it
No
lately.
problem.
But um, I guess what I'm interested in is the complexity of thought we have to have if we're going to think about these things. That we shouldn't come up with the most popular position that all our friends agree with. I
Right.
think that if we are going to yell at people with a megaphone, we should be very careful. And it does sound
Yeah.
fun. People do that at Burning Man too. Um, and 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 there's very complex equations of all the factors, and about externalities, and how in developing civilizations we've dumped all these external costs onto other systems or countries.
Right.
I mean, if we get
Or greenhouse gases. Yeah, it costs. We
well,
just pushed it
obviously
to other generations. Yeah.
we're destroying the air. I mean, so much of it, and so it's so complex that I'm frightened of simple solutions. I'm frightened of simple politics. I'm frightened of simple economics, and I'm mostly frightened of coercion because everything we've experienced in civilization over thousands of years, whoever's the most coercive are the ones who control things, and they will take from the land. They will poison the earth, and they don't. It just that's how it works out. Any organization that exists will end up serving the organization, not whatever they say that they're serving. And
Yeah.
so, I've taken a pretty hardcore approach in removing myself from civilization as far as I can. I'm like
And you've done really good at it. Yeah.
really good at, I'm
Really impressive.
still
Yeah.
alive after a while, just like you are. You know, you've escaped in some ways from the economic system, and you're still
I
playing.
could escape more, but yeah.
Sure, but it's all just guesses. And I guess all I can do is have great respect for you, for the work you're doing.
And I have great respect for you and what
Thank
you're
you,
doing.
man.
Yes.
I think we can inspire each other, I hope. And hopefully this conversation, when people watch it, they'll think, you know, I don't want to be like Brian. I don't want to be like Alex. I want to be like me. I'm going to use what I got, where I got, to take care of what I can and make a better world. That's all we can do. So I hope we've done a
Yeah.
good job at that for whoever's listening.
Yeah.
All the links will be in the description.
Yeah.
And
Individual initiative's important. I think
it is.
that's what I did, that's what you did, that's what other people need to do, is taking that individual initiative to think like, I want to create a better world, or I want to help these people, or I want to help these animals, or I want to surround myself with positivity and a good life. That individual initiative is going to go a long way, and then that's going to help the balance. It's going to help all the other aspects that we talked about, because we have that information, we have the tools, the resources, the knowledge. So yeah, just that priority. So
We've got the global consciousness now. Let's use the global consciousness. All right, dude, I'm going to take off.
yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you
Yeah.
so
Thank
much
you.
for your time, man. I have great respect for you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. You too. Thank you very much, Brian, for all the listeners. Yeah. Appreciate this conversation.